Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Ladies podcast. I got it. ABCs. Welcome to the Barenaked ABCs, where we discuss every Barenaked Lady song from 7 to Y. It doesn't matter if the song is told from a male, female, or non-binary specific point of view. We will look at that song and say, what a good song. When I was born, my parents called me Tracy. Joining me this week are people that their parents named them Heidi, Stefan, and Betsy.
Yeah.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, we do have a Mil joining us. Yay! Yeah. Hello, Mil. And guys, this is Mil. Mil has been on a couple other times before. One of which has not been released yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one.
I'm kind of holding on to it. I'm holding it hostage.
Just like you do with us every week.
This week's song is What a Good Boy. And if you haven't heard it before, here is a quick snippet.
When I was born, they looked at me and said, what a good boy, what a smart boy, what a strong boy. And when you were born, they looked at you and said, what a good girl, what a smart girl, what a pretty girl. Got these chains.
All right. Well, we don't have an Aaron this week, so I can't ask him what album it's on. And I know that Stefan knows what album this one's on.
I sure do. It's ladies and gentlemen, this comes off of Silver Ball. I'm just kidding. It comes off of the original, and the best, Gordon. Yes, I am biased.
Absolutely the best.
So, guys, they have played this song 187 times live.
That is not a shock.
They should.
They played it 24 times since Stevens left.
Holy smokes. Okay. That's not a lot, is it?
But they haven't played it since 2011.
Wow. I was wondering because it has been a while.
Maybe it's because he's a bad boy now.
However, Steven has sung it 163 times solo.
Huh. Interesting. I wonder if he got the rights to that one.
Well, I mean, they can. I just don't think they like to, or they don't do it much. I mean, Ed.
It could be. It's interesting when Steven does it. He doesn't capo it, but Ed does capo it at 5, which changes it to fit his voice and key range better. So that could be too. Like it's definitely different.
I was going to say, I wonder if it's in something that is easy for him. He did sing it once solo when he did his live from home concert in 2020 in April during COVID. It's also been sung by Rob Thomas, Ingram Hill, and Thomas Locke and Eric Schwartz, as well as you brought one to us this week that I didn't know exists this week, Heidi. The Duke's Men of Yale did it as well as during their a cappella work.
That's pretty cool.
This song hit number 34 on the Canadian singles chart, which is pretty good considering I didn't even know it was a single.
Huh. I didn't know it was a single either. How can it be a single if it's on an album?
Oh, that's an amazing question. I can't answer that. Heidi, do you know how they do that?
Well, they often will release a single before the album comes out.
How do they measure?
It's kind of like the equivalent of releasing a 45.
How do they measure how much the single is selling though if it's on an album? Like how do they?
I don't think you can. I think it's they would just figure out the single, like if they released it on a single CD or a single. Remember the singles cassettes with only one like song on each?
Oh, I hated that.
Oh my god, the single. Yeah, so I don't think you can, because once it's on the album, but sometimes they'll release singles before the LP comes out. So that I don't know how often that happens. Well, no, it does, because you can stream like the new Feeling Good. Like that's just released, but it's not, we don't have the album yet. So they're kind of, they'll release like a trailer, if you will, for the album by giving you one song.
Right. It's just very confusing, because if they release 2 or 3 singles off an album, like I don't personally go out and buy singles. I'll buy the whole album. I probably bought a few singles way back in the day, and when they came out, but it's been a while. So to me, that's even more impressive if they don't count any of the record sales toward that, because if this was their like 4th music video, so this album was already out, had already released. To me, astounding, considering the fact that they couldn't count the album sales. That means like it was number 34 on just people buying just this single. Wow. So there's a couple different versions of this song. Of course, there's the version that's on Gordon. There's also the live version that was on the 1994 single for Jane. There was another live version that they released for Rock Spectac. And then the Rock Spectac version they later reused for Disc 1 All Their Greatest Hits. Whew. Also, there is an album called Upfront, Canadians Live from Mountain Stage, and it was on that as well, but it is a different recording.
Huh. That sounded complicated.
This song was played during the end credits of 1995 film Stonewall. It was also played during the episode called Hate Crimes on Homicide: Life on the Street. And it was used in a commercial for the A&E show Intervention.
Wow. That is a deep dive.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really like surprised how much this song has been used, because there's so many other songs that haven't been used off this album.
Yeah, it is. But this is a pretty good song, I think.
I think I did know that one.
Why don't we talk about the song? Heine, how about you do us a favor and you give us a breakdown?
I will absolutely give you the breakdown. So, What a Good Boy, one of the greatest songs of all time, is obviously off the Gordon album, which we already know. It runs at about 3 minutes, 55 seconds. If you go with the original version that is on the studio recording, and about 97 beats per minute in the key of G. The basic form is a verse 1, chorus verse 2, chorus verse 3, which sounds more like a bridge, chorus, and then verse 4, and you end on the verse, which is kind of unusual for a song, because you end on a repeat of the first verse and then it fades out at the end, which I think is pretty creative. It's a pretty simple chord progression. It's a 1-5-4 progression, except the C add 9, which is we've talked about before. You add the 9th which is actually the 2nd degree of the scale, into that C chord to give it a little spice. So it goes which is G chord, to born, D chord, to said, C add 9, and that kind of repeats throughout. So it's a 1-5-4 5/4 progression throughout, which is a very standard rock progression. You have, even in the chorus, it sticks with that G, D, C add 9. The one really neat part is in the end of the chorus, with the "Be with me tonight," bum, 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 that goes down almost chromatically, where you have a G chord, then you have a G chord, but you have the F sharp in the bass, which is a half step lower than G. So you're going down what we call chromatically. So down by half steps. So G to G with the F sharp in the bass to an E minor. So going from F sharp to E. So if you go alphabetically, G, F, E, and then landing on C. So it drops a little bit. So it's descending with the "Be with me tonight." I know that it isn't right. It does the same exact thing there. And then "Be with me tonight, I go to school." So he goes right. It transitions really smoothly between chorus and verse. Again, not that challenging of a breakdown, because the chord structure is pretty straightforward, but still brilliant lyrically, and I love the fact that they end with a repeat of the first verse and just fading out without doing a repeat of the chorus or doing anything like that at the end. So that's the basic breakdown of What a Good Boy.
Except for on the live versions, which have the outro.
Right.
What a good boy, what a smart boy, what a strong boy. When you were born, that you wouldn't say, what a good girl, what a smart girl, what a pretty girl, hey! What a pretty girl, hey!
I mean, every time they obviously, if you look at the live version, or when Steven does it in difference to how Ed does it, when Ed has performed it, Ed switches and uses a capo on the 5th fret, so it changes so it fits his range, his voice range better. But Steven sticks to the original no capo version, because again, Steven's got a very different voice timbre and range than Ed does. So, and of course, this was a Steven sung song originally, so makes sense that Steven kind of owns the key.
Now, in terms of the instruments, there's nothing special on here instrumentally. We have Andy on the organ and piano. We have Jim on the double bass. We have Steven on guitar. We have Ed on guitar, and we have Tyler on drums. Like they're straightforward with the normal things that they would play. I didn't notice any major things that I'm like, oh, I got to mention this about the music. But did you guys have any specific notes that you wanted to say about the music or instrumentation?
I think it's quite simple. It's got a good sound to it, and it's pretty smooth. Something I can understand and comprehend. Yeah, so that's, I think, one of the major appeals of the song is, like how you said, it kind of descends, and it's very simple to follow.
I agree.
She concurs.
Not to cheat, but yeah. Because they can get pretty crazy and wild with all the stuff they add in, but this is relatively low key for them. But it's earlier on too, but still, they had some pretty crazy stuff earlier on as well. And when Kevin joined on, it was a lot crazier. So,
in terms of how the album is set up, this is an interesting spot for this song. And normally you wouldn't hear me say, hey, this needs to be moved around, especially a lot on Gordon. But it's really intriguing that you had these upbeat songs like Be My Yoko Ono, and then in comes Wrap Your Arms Around Me, which is a ballady type song, and then follows it up with What a Good Boy. And then from What a Good Boy, we go right into King of Bedside Manor.
Did you see the interview where he was talking about playing in the UK in Glasgow and the surprise that people knew this particular song and knowing, like, I think this is kind of the cult classic of this album in that most people know $1 Million or they know Brian Wilson, but this is that one track that it has just resonated, I think, with so many people. And when we break down lyrics, I think we can go there. But there's an article that from 2018 on Pancakes and Whiskey, which is, they did an interview with Page. And he said, basically, the last time he was there was in 2007, and here it was 2018. And he said that going back to a lot of smaller venues that BNL had played in the early days, turns out there were some people who were actually there at those first shows, like in Glasgow. And I remember the first time in 92 hearing a full audience singing along to What a Good Boy and thinking, these aren't just our friends and family. These aren't people we know, but yet they knew all the words to What a Good Boy. And I think that's kind of why it's that cult classic from the album that people just know. And that was really interesting. I think that his epiphany that these aren't just people that have been coming to our shows. These are people that are across the world, and yet they love this song.
Mm-hmm. And I could see why, especially in Glasgow, it would be kind of striking home, because this is, I mean, when it comes to, for example, the Proclaimers, we know that they were very affected by the Proclaimers. This has a very Proclaimers feel for when they do their ballads. They do this really simple but powerful word type message.
Very simple message. I'm not exactly sure what it means.
And interesting, like there's a thread on Reddit too that some people have used this song. It's like if you had to introduce Barenaked Ladies to somebody with one song, and several people bring up this song, not Brian Wilson, not $1 Million, not Too Little Too Late, not Pinch Me, but What a Good Boy. And I find that to be very interesting because it's not the fun naked side of BNL. It's that first, I think it's our first taste of that real introspection, that real deepness in their writing that was very different than some of the other songs on that album. There were a few.
We haven't come to wrap your arms around.
Yeah, that one was, that's a tough, that's a heavy one too.
Yeah.
But I still don't think that one resonates like this song.
I would agree. This song, I think, resonates with a lot more people because I think people in general match with what is being said in this song and can kind of feel that. So what we should probably talk what this song is about. And I will say, on song meetings, holy cow, I have never seen people arguing more and more insults thrown on song meetings than were done on this song. There was name calling, there was insulting, there was just some completely mean and cruel things that were said about other people, like toward other people that were responding on this song. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it really riles up a lot of emotions.
That's completely, I mean, like unnecessary. Like that's everybody's going to have a different opinion, and you don't have to agree with everybody. And it's just, the song means what it means to you.
Yikes! I'm on there now, and holy.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Go to songmeetings.com and you're like, the first thing is like, he says by your argument, we could determine that it's about a man in love with a sheep because he asserted somebody asserted that it was a brother-sister relationship. I'm like, I think, but then I can kind of see that too. I think it's just, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what other people's analysis is because I know what I've always thought, but.
Well, I'll kind of start us off if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so with a name like Tracy in the 80s, it's kind of understandable why this song would speak to me. I I often felt like I was being put into a box because of the name I'd been given. Um, my mother often said that, you know, she wanted to have girls and that she was just she was fine with boys. But she also named me Tracy. So, you know, a little bit of undercurrent there. And, you know, we peg boys into a specific box and don't allow a lot of variation. And, you know, as people may notice, you know, I'm very nasally with my voice. I'm a bit feminine in my presentation. I've often been mistaken for gay because of my voice and because of my mannerisms. And as a kid, that bothered me more so because I wasn't than because it was an insult. But even back then, it was really an insult when you're a kid and on the playground, that was considered an insult. And this song really resonated with me that, like, hey, people are making assumptions about who you are and what you're like because of things that you can't control and that are given to you from the very beginning. And, you know, from the moment we're born, we're put into boxes by our names, by the expectations that parents have for us, by our parents' hopes and dreams. And those are our hair shirts and the chains around our necks. And we can't possibly ever meet those expectations. The same thing happens when we enter a relationship. The other person has expectations about us based on their own past experiences and their own hopes and dreams of what we are. And mostly we're not going to be able to meet up with those.
Yeah. I mean, some of those have come from generations of observations about people and roles, and of course it changes with societal changes as well. You know, if you look back in back during Elizabethan eras and stuff like that, high heels were a fashion statement, you know, and men wore them primarily. Women did not. So I mean, and it's changed, you know, from men wearing them and wearing wigs and whatnot to women doing that now. So I mean, things change with society. Ours is undergoing a change now. So I mean, it's variable.
I mean, if you go back into the 30s and 40s in America, girls wore blue, men wore pink. That was the way it was. You did not change that. And then you go to the 70s, and it's completely the opposite. Like, it's just, culture is completely societal and you know, created, and it's fine for those who meet what is currently the norm or what society says is the norm. But for those who aren't, you start getting shoved into these other boxes that don't necessarily fit you either.
Yeah, it depends on the person, I'd say. You know, I mean, we're facing today, and the great debate between what is sex and what is gender, and gender is societal constructs versus biological constructs, and sex is more of a biology. So if a male, breeds with a woman and they produce an offspring, that offspring has a 50% chance of being female, 50% chance of being male.
49.
Rarely does one come out with both parts. I'm lacking words here. Sorry, I'm tired. So, you know, and then, but I mean, that's been happening for millennia, is that boys have been born and girls have been born, and a lot of constructs have been developed from all those centuries and millennia of those genders, in assuming certain roles based off of their physical abilities and what they were born as. But today things are changing. We're questioning what roles do these different sexes have within our society, and how do they apply? So what a good boy is completely different now than it was in the 80s. And what a good girl is completely different as well. It's like a complete complete change of all those things. I'm sorry, I'm not very very fluent with what I'm saying right now, but I think you guys have an idea of what I'm trying to convey.
I get the gist.
Yeah. See, sorry, I'm still thinking about fixing my toilet. Sorry, that's what I was doing before I got on the podcast, guys. Sorry.
Priorities.
Mil, I know you're having trouble with your connection, but I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on this song.
I don't know what you've already covered while I was gone. It sounded quite similar to what I had on it, like about the expectations and stuff that you feel, and how like not creating them and not meeting them is what creates that gap where shame comes in. And I think that's kind of reflected in that third verse of like lying around, not speaking up, and that was what I got, that feeling of shame from it. I mean, a lot of it for me comes from being trans. I mean, the obvious start of the song part, but lines like "afraid of change, afraid of staying the same," and I wake up wondering anything in my life is ever going to change. That's very much, that part when you know it, but you don't know what to do. You don't know whether you want to change or not. I mean, I've also felt that with my health problems lately. There's that after 3 years of being like so ill and housebound practically, to like the idea of going back out and having a normal life is almost scary at the same time that you want it. So
that's true.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that stuff you already covered while I was gone, so
it doesn't really matter. Your opinions matter.
Yeah. What were your first thoughts the first time you experienced this song?
I don't think I liked it that much the first time that I heard it, because I don't tend to like this sort of slow ballad. But I think it was seeing a social media post where a trans person had highlighted that line about being afraid of change, afraid of staying the same, and I finally connected it to my life. But before, it's always that weird line at the end of the chorus, like be with me tonight, I know it isn't right, be with me tonight. I was always like, why do you have to shove a relationship into every single song? It's just, that's always annoyed me so much about BNL songs. But and I don't know, the third verse kind of undermines it a bit to me when it's I know that you
I couldn't tell you I was wrong. Chicken down, grabbed a pen and a paper, sat down and I wrote this song. I couldn't tell you that you were right, so instead I looked in the mirror, I watched TV, laid awake all night.
Feels like strange to me, that part. I can't remember the exact lyrics of it, but I don't know, if you're addressing your parents with the song, then it feels strange to be suddenly turn around and say to your parents, oh, you were right about me and all those expectations you had about me. I never quite understood that part of it either. So,
well, for me, what it kind of comes down to is that the other person, this is how I read it, is that the other person that's in the relationship knew that they weren't accepting themselves as who they are, and that they weren't totally being free about who they were. And he's trying to come to the narrator is trying to come to some form of homeostasis about like this, and come to some catharsis about this, and he can't or she can't like come to the spot about what's going on for them and how they feel, which is why they checked it out and they wrote down the song instead.
Okay, that makes more sense. To me, it's just literally pure like anger and angst against your parents. Is this song? Is that's all that it means to me?
I think the anger is more toward himself, because it says, "I looked in the mirror, laid awake all night, watch TV, lay awake." Like if you're not comfortable in the body that you're in, and you look in the mirror, like that's not a comfortable thing. That's gotta be you're trying to confront yourself at that point. And he still can't confront himself, so he watches TV and lays awake all night.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's always been, I've been fine. It's just everyone else around me that was pushing all this stuff on me. So I've always been angry at everybody else. So.
Mm. I never really got too much understanding from the song. It didn't really resonate too much with me. I just thought it sounded good, and it seemed to have a great structure to it, and that's why I liked it. I mean, it didn't really resonate too much about it, other than behavior, being a good boy. Do what you're supposed to do, kind of thing. If you go into a store, don't touch anything, keep your hands to yourself, don't yell, don't cry, don't be a pain in the butt.
Does Tracy still have to tell you that every time you guys go in a store?
Yes. But usually I'm saying it to him because he keeps on grabbing my.
Only at concerts.
Yeah, you would think that, but
That second, here's the part that confuses me. That second paragraph. Verse. I go to school,
paragraph.
I write exams. If I pass, if I fail, if I drop out, does anyone give a damn? If they do, they'll soon forget, because it won't take much for me to show that my life ain't over yet. The part that confuses me about this is all before this. It's talking about how all these people have expectations of this person. Like, people are putting you're putting your expectations on me and making me have to be how you want me to be. But in this paragraph, he's like, I don't think anyone has any expectations for me around school at all.
I mean, for me, I was always a super smart kid from a young age, so there was always this massive expectation for me to do really well at school. So I went and I did the exams, and it kind of felt like no matter how well I did at it, I never did well enough. They were always like, okay, you got an A, but next time get an A star. And it's like this feeling of like, does anyone actually care about me? You just care about how I do in these exams. And if I pass or fail or anything like that, you just, like, it doesn't matter at the end of it. You can be a total genius, drop out, and then you find yourself and what you want to do in life. And that's the I'll show you that my life isn't over yet part.
I think it's a caring. I think it's a twofold caring. For one, I think it's an indirect way of trying to making sure that their child or a parent's child gets good enough grades so that they can get a good job, and then they know that they're going to be safe and secure in the future. It's not necessarily how you feel at the moment with taking a test, because classes stink and I hate them. And I was never good at tests, but I know that tests lead to a degree. Sometimes tests lead to an advanced degree. Sometimes it leads to opportunities that you would never otherwise have to be able to bring in a revenue that can support yourself and family and continue a family. On the other hand, it also can provide a sense of pride for the parents, because like they've got an A student, and it's like, look at what we raised, or look what we created is something to be proud of. It shows that there's good genetics there, and we have like exceptional progeny, so I think it's kind of a twofold thing there, in my opinion.
Stephen has said in his TED Talk that sometimes he enters himself into the song to make it more personable, to make it more relatable, and has, showed with the chorus girl a line or two that he entered into it, even though the song wasn't written about him. He put a piece of himself into it. I almost wonder if Ed and Steve here are putting themselves into the song in that second verse with the, does anyone give a damn if I do well in school? I'm going to show that my life is worthwhile beyond school. I'm going to show it in this other way because that's not where my talents are.
That's confidence. Wait until you get older, you might change your tune. My wife has turned out shit.
I think to kind of bring in everything that was said so far, like my thoughts were like growing up in the 70s, where then it became girls wear pink and boys wear blue, and I remember having my hair cut really, really short when I was a kid, and it was probably Percy. It was probably I don't know, it was the late 70s. I'm aging myself now, and it was really short because my mother had cut it way shorter than I wanted it to be, and so many people were, oh, you have a cute son, and it became this, boys have short hair, girls have long hair, and even though I had wanted the Dorothy Hamill cut. If anybody recalls Dorothy Hamill, she was an ice skater. No, Mil? And an ice skater that I was just enamored with because it was the 70s. Dorothy Hamill was it. And she had this horrible, like, it's a horrible haircut in retrospect, but I wanted that cut. And then it got cut too short and I looked like a little boy, and it was more like I looked like Tiny Tim than I looked like Dorothy Hamill. And we grow up with that. I mean, even still, like, boys play with trucks and girls get dolls, and that's so not how we raised our children at all. Like, Lego is for everybody. But we're still doing that. Like, there's still pink Lego sets and boy Lego sets, and we're starting to maneuver away from a lot of that now with less push on gender specific things. But it's still like back when most of us, sorry, Mel, are about the same age as Stephen and Ed. So we are in that time period of when I was born. And I love that. The name is the hair shirt I wear. Coming from a boy, you had to be good at math and science. You were expected to be, in like athletics or sports or, something that made you more masculine, if we will. And girls, you will be smart with, you can be smart with the arts and writing and humanities, but girls aren't smart with math. And then we start to, it's that, like, the idea of it being the hair shirt, which comes from, of course, Stephen's Jewish heritage, and what is a hair shirt and what is it made of, and the fact that it's made with her hair. But I think it's that constant comparison of men versus women. And even though this is who I was born, like, this is what has been put on me as a human being. And it's like going back to what everybody said so far about societal expectations. And as a teacher who has been at it for 30 years, we see that still. And I see so many students that are struggling with that, with, who they are and what expectations are on them. And that's why we have such a high rate of anxiety and depression and identity questioning, and because we're finally at the stage where we're like, who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be called? What is your name? The power of who we are and what we call ourselves is very important. But I like what Mil said too about the, I wake up scared, I wake up strange, I wake up wondering if anything in my life isn't ever going to change. Like, will I always have to fulfill this role? And in some cultures, it is still extremely demanding. Like, we look at families in India or Asian countries, and there's so much pressure on boys to be this way, and girls, you won't run the company, your brother has to run the company, and you will
Doctor, lawyer,
be fully covered, and you cannot speak, but your brother can do this. And it's so disheartening. But your comment about, I go to school, I write exams, if I pass, if I fail, I think we all go through that period of, does it matter? None of this matters. And I've been in education for 30 years, and I'll tell you that bullshit of, of you need to know algebra because you'll need it later. No, you won't. Unless you're doing something that requires you to know algebra, in which case you will go into a career path where you will use your mathematical skills. But you won't have a calculator in your pocket every day, is what they told us in 1982. And yet, yeah, I do. I can figure out all kinds of things. You need to know this later in life. No, you don't. And I am an arts educator. I teach music, obviously. So it's these are things that allow the students to kind of figure out that, yeah, this might not be relevant to but relevance is you can communicate through music. You can connect through musical lyrics and through hold on. Okay. Percy, my darn Percy, my dog, Percy Granger. All right. Anyway,
Close.
Percy Aldridge Granger. He's a pain in my butt, but he's adorable. But I think I know I'm kind of going on here, but they're right. Like, does anybody care what's happening in high school? Everybody puts so much emphasis on school, on your, especially grades, tests, SAT, like all of those things. And in the long run, if the world ended tomorrow, nobody would give two shits about if you passed that AP bio exam your junior year or what. Like, it's so crazy the amount that we put.
And to kind of simplify, to kind of go on what Heidi is saying, like, the song does it very quickly, much more succinctly. No, I'm just teasing you, Heidi. And does it, and it points out the fact that we do it in the small little things. I know as a parent, I have caught myself on a number of occasions being careful with what words that I choose to use with my children, because of this song. Like, this song, and obviously the changes we have had as a society, but this song was my first introduction into a lot of that. And like, what a good boy, what a smart boy, what a strong boy. The first words that we use to describe kids in the hospital, in very quickly on when we introduce a person to our child, is, oh, what a strong boy, oh, what a smart boy, oh, what a good boy, oh, what a pretty girl. We lean on those words, and we, as a person who tries effortfully to not use those words, it is hard. And then you notice how much people really do use those words all around you all the time to describe your child, to describe other people's children. When you try to go and you try to compliment the kids in the hall, not the group, I
love that group. Yeah.
These the gender things still hold to now. My husband cooks in our house. I do the budgeting and the, like, make sure all the bills are paid. He does the cooking. I clean. We share in a very partnership. And when we raised our kids, it always pissed him off that he would go to a restaurant and there were and Tracy, I'm sure you can identify with this as well, is there weren't baby changing stations in the men's bathrooms.
Nope.
And how, like, that's so horrifying.
If there were, they were used for cocaine.
The assumption that
Wow.
what?
I said, if there were, they were used for cocaine.
Oh man. But that, because we don't, the whole idea that you conform to this 1955 mentality of, dad comes home after working all day and puts the thing, and the woman hands him the glass of scotch, and you sit down and dinner's ready on the table, and is bananas. And I often think about, as I obviously, well, maybe not obvious, but I identify as female, and I like being girly, but I like being boy. Like, I like being working in the farm, and I like, I've always hung out with men for the most part because there's no freaking drama. No offense, Betsy, but girls suck. We know we suck because we are full of drama. And the guys I identified with better because like they would get pissed off at each other and they could throw jokes at each other. Nobody cared if you burped or you farted or you belched. And we all know Heidi's not the most ladylike in that I do fart and I do belch. But you're not supposed to. Like, that's not ladylike. Well, who says that it's like, who says it's a physical, biological response? And oh, we're supposed to be a certain weight and a certain height and a certain dress a certain way, and you must, like the etiquette classes. And it's frustrating because if I cut my hair short and wear a ball cap, that also doesn't mean that you can put, like, you can tell me that I can't, or that well, you must be this then if you do that. No, I just want to be who I want to be, and I want to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. But we do that without, we've gone as a culture, at least for up until about 7 years ago, we had gone as a culture into this more away from overt sexism and overtly putting people in boxes into it being an underlying covert type thing where we weren't realizing that we were doing it, and it was unintentional a lot of the times. Over the last 7 years, I'll say that has regressed and become less so. But like, I will catch myself when I talk to my daughter wanting just to like say, hey, good morning, beautiful, but then be like, no, I don't want her, that's not her main identity. I don't want that to be.
Yeah, wants that value tied up in just beauty. Yeah.
How she thinks up. I mean, I know she thinks that I think she's beautiful, but I don't want her to think like that's her endearing quality to me, and that's the only endearing quality.
You know what's also, I agree with you on that, Tracy. You know what's also interesting too is as a musician, as a music educator, Stephen plays the flute. And I don't know how many times I tried to start boys, like they would love to play, they wanted to play flute, and their parents were against it. It's a girl's instrument. I'm like, have you not heard of James Galway? Like, some of the greatest flute players in the world are men. But it was like, no, flutes are for girls. Boys can play like saxophone or percussion or trumpet, and girls don't play tuba. Like flute. Girls, and I was like, I was a brass player. I played euphonium, and that's like a baby tuba. So we do it in music so much. For years, we argued about female tenors because in the 80s and early 90s, voice specific range issues, and I sang a lot of tenor lines because I was a very low alto and I could handle some of the higher tenor parts. But now we're moving away from those kinds of things, especially in the music field. We've done a lot with changing our verbiage. For example, we no longer use terms like women's choir. We use treble choir or bass choir, or we have different terminology for gender specific choirs. And even in the chorus classroom, I used to say all the time, okay, ladies, because my sopranos and altos and men, and now it became tenors and basses, sopranos and altos. So I speak in terms of that language instead of specific. But we see it in music so much, especially with Stephen plays flute. I can imagine the shit he got for that when he was younger, because that's not a boy's instrument, especially in the 80s. I mean, you wanted to be a cool, like you didn't play flute as a guy. I mean, it just wasn't a thing. So even though that is complete bollocks, and we have amazing flute players of all genders, but I wonder too if that somehow impacted him later. If it was like, well, I did choose an instrument that wasn't traditional to my my gender. So
was Canada more progressive back in the 80s than the United States in regards to that? Or was it quite equivalent?
Not to my knowledge.
I think they're just in general a little more liberal, yeah. No?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I don't know. So, I mean, I'm thinking of Turin out in Britain. I mean, even his life choices was ill-fated and had a certain point of view that was held by the majority of the people, especially government and law enforcement. and things have changed quite progressively since then. And that was a part of the Commonwealth. So I'm wondering if Canada, who's part of the Commonwealth, was a little bit more progressive than we were at that time.
I don't know. I would hope most countries were.
I mean, I wouldn't take what England does for much, because we're still terribly transphobic over here at the moment, and like much worse than Canada now. So I wouldn't really look at us for much guidance.
I think that's kind of spreading around the world at this point.
It's a change, you know. Even when homosexuality was coming out of the closet, there was a lot of fear and a lot of hatred that was associated with that. And there's a greater acceptance now than there ever has been in the past. So I think that you just have to give it time. You know, people will adjust. That's how it goes. So there's always rough transitions.
And I think that this song is on, by the way, there's a great article that is on Fudge Buckets. I read it a couple weeks ago, and sugar. Hold on, give me just a second. And it's about, it's on Medium, devonprice.medium.com. It's Trans Roots, Barenaked Ladies Edition. And it talks about some of the songs, why a bunch of Canadian guys are trans icons. And it starts talking about What a Good Boy, and then it discusses some elements from I'll Be That Girl. It discusses some from Alcohol, because some of the please ignore you found me on the floor trying on your camisole.
Yes. I remember that.
Yeah. And of course, I'll Be That Girl. It has a lot of really strong lyrics. I tie my pantyhose around my neck, all the thing, right? And it talks even about just feeling helpless or uncomfortable in your own skin through Brian Wilson, where, you know, I had a dream I was 300 pounds, though I was very heavy. So and Upside Down, which I like, talks about the If I Hold My Tongue, which we talked about just last week. I'll never lose my voice. I won't be needing a rope. I'm gagged and bound, and I will not turn my whole life upside down. Like that, there's some stuff in there. Too Little Too Late. And then Steven's song Indecision, which also kind of alludes to things. It's a really neat article. I'm going to put it in the chat.
I want to go back to something you were mentioning before, Mil, with the relationship piece. And first of all, Song Meanings has the lyrics wrong online. So in the liner notes, it gives a better idea of why Steven's bringing this kind of relationship into the song during that chorus. So we got, this is the name is the hair shirt I wear. Now, the hair shirt is Woman from Your Brown Hair. I think that is because in this relationship, he's feeling like expectations that she has for him are kind of boxing him in. That's kind of his hair shirt that he's wearing at that point.
I mean, I guess for me, like, a hair shirt is like the perfect metaphor for what being misgendered or dead name feels like. That kind of like all over sensation of like cringe and itchiness and discomfort in your own skin. But the fact it's your brown hair, like, I don't know if people listeners at home can't see this, but I have brown hair. So for me, it's always been, I got my brown hair from my parents, and I got all these expectations and that gender placed on me from my parents. So to me, it's always been the hair shirt that I wear is your brown hair is like, this is all your fault, my parents. This is all from you guys. Everything, all this weight and stress on me kind of feeling. So like the name came from them, and so did the brown hair. But I don't know if Steve having brown hair is also that at all, but
it's a good association.
That's actually a really good point. So then it goes on to, this song is the cross that I bear. The correct line should say, bear it with me. So he's asking for the person that he's with to bear this responsibility and this cross with him, so it's not as heavy of a burden. Once again, going back to that Judeo-Christian religiosity. Then it switches to bear with me. So it goes from saying help me out with this process to saying also no, like this is really hard for me, so bear with me while I go through this. So again, that wonderful play on words that Stephen loves to do.
What about the section that's I couldn't tell you that I was wrong? Chickened out, grabbed a pen and paper, sat down and wrote this song. I couldn't tell you you were right. Is it that meant like he always had to be right and but he couldn't say she was right? I'm still kind of stuck on that verse. Watch TV and lay awake all night. I don't know.
I could either look at it when I've tried to examine it, like I could either look at it as wow, they really went out into left field and like went into this whole other direction with this song and talked about relationships instead of talking about what the song's about, which doesn't really sound, especially early BNL, they really kind of stuck to what they were talking about. So if I'm like, okay, well, if they're sticking what they're talking about, it sounds to me again like that person who's not comfortable and hasn't outed themselves, so to speak. Like, no, that's not who I am. Like, no, I'm this person. I fit within this box. But his partner is saying, no, like, why do you not see? Like, why can't you accept who you are? You are this person.
And then I looked in the mirror. That's an interesting line when he said response. So instead I looked in the mirror, watched TV and laid awake all night. So like trying to see who I am or what she sees or what I see. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of connection there.
The line that really confuses me is when temptation calls, we just look away.
I mean, for me,
I wish
that
priests could do that.
Okay.
That came out of nowhere. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think that links back into the whole afraid of change, afraid of staying the same, like the temptation of change calling.
Yeah.
And then, like, I remember seeing the social media post from a trans person where it was like seeing the hormones and seeing that kind of like ability to change, and then you look away from it because you're too afraid of like inviting a new kind of pain in if you take that path, or that you just stick with the pain that you already know instead.
Kind of going with the song Upside Down again, as Hetty was mentioning earlier. Like, I'd rather keep the life I'm in now that is uncomfortable than go to this other thing that I don't know, that I don't know if it will make me feel worse.
Yeah, I mean, the temptation is you really, really want it, but society tells you like, no, trans people are bad, they're worse, you shouldn't want that. And I don't know. I'm always coming at it from the trans angle, this song.
No, I mean, that's good because it's a different angle. And I think that, I mean, so Steven has come right out and said what the song is about. In the liner notes for disc 1, All Their Greatest Hits, under this song in there, they write little blurbs for every song. This one he wrote, I've heard so many good interpretations of this song that I'm loath to really tell the real story. But suffice it to say, it's an idealistic 21-year-old's view of gender roles.
Huh. Okay.
That's and then he went on to say how he was, when he watched Rob Thomas play it, he kept saying down there going, I wish I could sing this one.
Huh. That's pretty cool. It's very progressive being able to, and insightful to be able to think about that.
Well, at 21, to be looking at that stuff, from what I'm assuming is a cis male's point of view and to be going what that must be like, and to be able to write that song from that other point of view is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You really have to step out of yourself for that, because it's easy to get caught in your brain, but that's definitely an outside thinking point of view, and very
prophetic,
clairvoyant.
Yeah, that kind of stuff,
forward thinking. I know there are lots of adjectives.
I'm sorry to all the listeners out there. I just
brain fart.
Really trying here.
So,
at least I'm coming up with other words to describe what I mean.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Do people have any other things that they want to mention about this song? I mean, we've been pretty thorough, but Betsy's also been pretty quiet. I did give her the wrong song to study for this week, though. So luckily, she's Betsy, not vanishing off the screen.
True.
So, what are we going to rate this? Or Betsy, do you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah.
Betsy, your mic is off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That might be part of the reason that
she's been talking this whole time. We just haven't heard.
There we go.
Sorry. Yeah, no, the dog came in and then the child came in. I'm like, nobody wants to hear this bullshit. So.
The child. Now you're really putting the box.
So, this song spoke to me a lot because I have always been in a gray area. I'm kind of a weird unicorn niche of a person, and it's just always been that way. When I grow up, when I was younger, both of my brother and I are gingers, so you get teased for being a ginger. But my brother was older and he was pretty buff, so I didn't get teased too much for being a ginger. So there's that subsect. I never tested well. I didn't do exceptionally well in school because I overthought on exams and I could never really pick one answer. I played bass guitar for 7 years, and that's not a very feminine instrument. But it was fun. I liked it. And yeah, I've never really fit into one box, and there's been times where I've, my mom's very Martha Stewart, she was always telling me to be ladylike, and I never was. I would like some feminine things, but I felt suppressed in some ways growing up because of what they talk about with the hair shirt of you grow up and your gender is female, but I didn't always do things that typical girls did. I never did my hair or my makeup, even though my mom's a hairdresser. I would never really gravitated towards that. I wore guys jeans for a while just because they're kind of comfortable and I like the button fly and the colors. I was kind of a square peg in a round hole. I just kind of did my own thing. So this song really speaks to me. I'm kind of, I'm attracted to who I'm attracted to. I'm not necessarily male, female attraction. So I've kind of lived bits of this song, and the older I get, the more it resonates with me, because I think it's total bullshit to have this black and white ideology. As Tracy knows, only the Sith deal in absolutes.
Oh, wow.
So I've always been a fan of be in the gray area if that's what you feel you are. As long as you're a good person at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing. Who cares who you choose to be your partner or how well you test on a test, especially if it's not going to be part of your, career going forward. But Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about it. I really like the song a lot. So
I just wanted to say about the name part of it. I think Tracy said when I asked him that I'm the only person here that's changed my name legally at some point. So I don't know if you were interested to hear how that kind of
I would love
feels
to
for
hear
this.
that. Yes, I didn't want to
Yeah.
impose and
Oh, no kidding.
make you
No,
feel
it's
like you
okay.
had to.
That's okay. I was just like changing my name it really brought the kind of expectations that had been carried on it into focus for me, because it was a very obviously gendered name, and it also had a very different feel. It was quite a kind of old-fashioned name and quite a traditional name, and I've not really grown up into a very old-fashioned and traditional person, so there was a lot of disconnect there, that when I had that name, everyone saw me as, oh, you're so shy, you're intelligent, you're so mature for your age, and all these things. And that wasn't really the person I felt inside. And when you shed your name, you can also shed all those expectations, all that baggage. It's sort of like if you move to a new city, you don't have any of those like you don't have people that know you don't have an old self. You can be a completely new person in a new city. I think some people do that when they grow up out of perhaps an environment that they're not very comfortable with, so that they can get a fresh start. And
Yep.
When you go back to people that you know to tell them you've got a new name, there's this like resetting, because it's suddenly they can no longer assume that they know who you are as a person. The name is the container that they've placed everything they know about you into. So they have to reevaluate you anew and hopefully end up with a much clearer picture of you at the end of it. That was a very strange process.
I bet.
I talk with my
Yeah.
students, Mil, about the power of a name. I teach college now, but I taught public school for a long, long, long time. And I teach train teachers how to be music teachers now. That's my primary job. And I have an entire course or class that we devote to the power of your name and the power of what you want to be called. And it's the importance of knowing your students' names and finding out who they are and making sure you spell it right, that you respond to them in the right way, and you call them by the name that they want to be called. And because that is your number one piece to who you are. And when you shed your old name, your dead name, now you feel like this is who I am. And that's important to do that. And when I taught public school, I had a student that was transitioning from another very female name their freshman year, and they started transitioning their sophomore year. And it was, I think as a music educator, we are in a much more special spot. We have a different relationship with a lot of our students because we see them every day, and we work through music together, and we create together, and we collaborate and communicate together. And so I was one of the first teachers that knew, and they really struggled because they had some teachers that were more traditional that literally refused to call them by the name. And it's interesting because the name they were called would have been it doesn't matter. Like if you want to be called like if Stefan wanted to be called Buddy instead, how many people do we know that go by Richards that go by Dick, or Margaret's that go by Molly? And I never understood why it was that big of a deal. And along with that, so many teachers that are like, well, I just don't have time to learn all of their names. Yes, you do. And yes, you must, because that's their number one way of like that's their ownership. This is my name. Who am I? And our names are important, and what we want to be called is important, because that's a major piece, especially in the classroom, to give that identity and autonomy to the student. But like
Well, I think they need to learn who they are on the inside more than.
but you also need to
I
spell it.
think
Well, your name's too hard to pronounce. Your name's too hard to spell. You figure that out. I'm not good with names. You need to figure it out because we get, if you've got a kid, I often ask my students, well, yeah, they've been mispronouncing it since first grade. I just eventually just let it go. And it always reminds me of that commercial, which you might not get over there, Mil, but, or it's not a commercial. It's the student teacher, Key and Peele. Hey, you done messed up, Aaron. D nice. And then there's a later one that they did where the substitute Key and Peele or Key is like D nice, and she just goes here, Bilake here, because they are just like, I don't want to fight anymore. So they're just calling me that, and that's what it is. And I'm like, that is so not okay. They need to you need to correct them on that because that's what we have. Everybody messes up Heidi. H-I-E-D-E-E-H Heather. I get a lot of Heathers and a Wendy. I'm like, do I look like a Wendy? Maybe. I don't know. But you don't just give up and not correct anymore.
I think that's pretty deep. People have been missaying my name for most of my life. You just can't,
Stop talking, Stefan.
Yeah, people say that all the time.
I got a lot of Becky, and I grew up in that era where there was that Sir Mix-a-Lot song. I'm like, Becky, oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. And every time I heard Becky, I would cringe because it's just like, I don't know, it's just everything I'm not. That type of that. What was personified in that music video is everything I'm not.
And Tracy, I never really thought about it, but you're right, because I have Tracy's that are female friends and I have Tracy's that are male. Kelly was a big one when I was young because my sister was named Kelly and we knew a lot of males that were named Kelly. And so those Pat, Patrick, Pat, Patricia.
I've often thought of changing my name because it doesn't, the name itself doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't really reflect who I think that I am, nor what I think I want people to think of when they think of me. But that being said, I've never come up with a name that I'm like, that sounds more.
Can we?
Yeah, we'll come up with
for you.
Oh God!
I always wanted to be Hydrenka, like.
Okay,
or
go ahead.
Adelheid instead of Heidi. I think Adelheid sounds better.
Luke Skywalker tomorrow.
So, I mean, with my divorce, I was like, I decided to go into a new job and go by a different name. So at my workplace, I go by Will rather than Stefan. So Will is my middle name, yes.
Really?
So I've decided to change that.
I know a lot of people that go by their middle name instead of their first name.
It's easier, and I figured my first half of my life had bad juju, so why not give the second half a run for its money? New name, new person, new everything, So like what Mil was saying, you get a fresh start.
Yeah, that's very much how I felt when I changed it.
It's like, I mean, your parents have given you the name, but you can't. You can either let that name define you, or you can know who you are, and it takes a deeper, stronger, more healthier, emotional person to be able to identify who they are and know who they are, and be able to live accordingly, and know that that's the name I've got. If you want to change it when you turn 18 or whenever, go for it.
It's such a hard thing, Stefan, though, when you're a parent, especially Tracy, you can attest to this, especially if you teach. Because you go through such a litany of names when you're naming your child and you're like, okay, I can't ever have a Michael because that kid was a nightmare in my classroom. I can't ever have this kid because I'll always remember that kid. So you go through such a litany of names. Most people take great care in choosing the name of your child.
But it's funny because we don't when we choose the name for our child, we don't go, hey, what will our child, we think, what will our child be like? But we don't know what our child will be like. And I think it's so incredibly insensitive and stupid in our culture that we don't make a bigger thing of like, hey, you're 18. What do you want to be called? What do you feel like what do you feel your name is? Because we picked this name randomly.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good thing, Tracy. That'd be a great thing. You got it. It's legal. You have to have it.
Well, you think about some names though that put hair shirts on our children from the time they're born. Like I named my son Noah because it means gentle wanderer, and I loved that it was just so. I don't know. I love the name. But you think about like Worthington Sapphire the Third, or I don't even know. Like growing up with a name that puts so much pressure on you. You think back to like the Rockefellers, or God, like thinking about a name of somebody that came with a legacy or a lineage like that, and you're like Adolf, you still can't use. Like it's still hard to use Adolf for a kid's name. But some names come with expectations, right? Like, do they come with expectations? Do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's kind of weird too, because when you meet somebody, let's say Catherine,
that's like my daughter's named Catherine.
I've known a lot of Catherines in my life, and they all seem to have strangely similar strong traits, very strong.
But it depends. Is it spelled with a K or is it spelled with a C? And do they go by Katie or Kathy? Because Kathy, I swore I didn't name my daughter with a C, Kathy, because there was a Kathy I taught with and she was evil. And I wanted Katie to be more Catherine. I know, right? How like we do that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like think about the difference between like the expectations on a Chastity versus a Catherine.
Mm-hmm. Versus a Tracy.
Or versus a Veronica or a Heather.
It's a hair shirt. Their name is a hair shirt.
And then you add something like my middle name is Joanne. So my grandmother always called me Heidi Joe. And the minute you put a Joe or a Sue after anything, people think you are from Northern Appalachia and Heidi Joe. And then they start sounding like Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh. And that's just wrong. Heidi Joe. Sorry.
So we're not going to get another chance to ever use this moniker for our rating system. So I say, and you guys can veto me if you want, I say we go with how many hair shirts.
I knew you were going to go with hair shirt. That was my suggestion too.
Well, since you were like-minded, Heidi, how many hair shirts do you give this song?
I mean, this is easy. It's easy. This is 5 hair shirts from the get-go. I think it's one of their greatest songs ever. I think lyrically, the way it's sung, just the message it sends. I've loved this song since I heard Gordon when it came out. Like this is one of those that will never leave my who I am. So it's 5 for me. 5 hair shirts, absolutely.
Okay. Stefan. Oh wait, he's muted.
I'm here.
Right.
I'm here. Sorry. We just soaked the dog, so hopefully the
a euphemism.
Yeah. Well, so hopefully
you beat me to that one,
cool
Betsy.
down a little bit. So, well, I didn't soak him.
I did.
Yeah. The other half did. What are we doing?
How many hair shirts do you give this song?
Oh, hair shirts. Okay, yes. Well, this is just a great song, and it's such a unique song too. When you hear the song, it's like you don't really hear a song like it. It's very groundbreaking, I think, for me. I think it's a fantastic song. So I'm going to rank this 4.8 because it's easy to listen to. I don't really kind of understand too much until this podcast. This podcast really opened up my eyes as far as names and what it means and roles and all kinds of stuff. So it really helped me out. So I'd say 4.8 hair shirts for me because it's great. It's a fantastic song.
All right. Betsy, how many hair shirts do you give this song?
Well, I think lyrically it's a 5, but from a musical standpoint, it's really good. But one of the things with Barenaked Ladies that I've really come to like is when they add like a few flourishes or different instrumentation in, it just really ups the score for me. So I think that would make it a 4.75 for me.
Okay.
I'm not the hater.
Betsy, you know, I think that Heidi is over there thinking, what a letdown.
Oh no.
What a letdown. What just oh no, I can't come up with anything else. That was my attempt at musical.
And yes, that's next week's song.
What a letdown?
Yes.
Really?
But Mil, what would you give this song?
Never heard of it.
I think this is a song I very much have to be in the right mood for. This is for me, this is a kind of go-to song at times because I have one parent that was like very accepting when I changed my name, and they kind of accepted that I did not grow up into the person they imagined I would be, and they were 100% okay with that and just wanted to know who I was now, and that was such a relief. But then my other parent, my father was not accepting, and to this day still calls me by my old name, and his reaction was that me wanting to change my name was inconvenient and a selfish fuss over nothing, because he gives the impression that he thinks he knows who I am better than I do, and that he does not want to let go of the person that he imagines me to be and wants me to be. And that feeling of pain when you know that when I realize that he wants that person to exist more than me, and whenever I have to deal with him and I have to deal with that feeling, I come and listen to this song. So that for me, the song is inherently tied to that painful feeling of confronting my father and his side of the family, and therefore I can't give it a perfect score because of that slightly painful aspect, but I would give it a 4.9 hair shirts because it helps me cope with that feeling.
Nice.
Thank you. When you started saying it, that's the connection I made too. Yeah. So everybody has their own journey, you know. It's like including your father. So it's like this might not be his lifetime to get it. It might be a next lifetime. You never know. But you know, it's like this is one he's got. So, and this is the choices he makes. And you're making your own choices. You're becoming your own person. So you can't let other people's choices really dissuade you from who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like why I like the idea of normalizing and making it kind of a normal thing to change your name when you're 18, when you're an adult, because
I think that's a fantastic idea, Tracy.
Yes.
You said that your dad said that it was a selfish thing. It is, and you can't get anything more selfish than picking how you want people to talk about you and represent you.
Yes.
Your life.
Definition selfish and should be.
I know, saying that kind of saying that like this name you gave me and called me for years actually makes me really unhappy and uncomfortable was quite it's hard conversation to have with your parents who gave you the name of more than anybody else. So
you're like, you tried it, but you fell short.
You might have that one day, Tracy, but
you tried to give me this name before you knew who I even was.
A for effort. I still love you.
It wasn't like you knew me for 3-4 years and said, this is the name that fits them. You chose it before they were born, usually.
I mean, how would you feel one day if your kids changed their names, any of that has kids?
I'd be okay with it because, and I've thought about that because I'm like, I put a ton of thought into it. My wife and I talked about their names a lot. There were a lot of discussions that happened around the names. And we finally came to an agreement, but just because that name sounds good to us as one that we've gotten comfortable with using doesn't mean that it's what they feel best personifies who they are. And they should have the right to say, no, this is how I want people to respect me and respond to me. And I would totally be okay with it. But my rank on this song, I haven't given mine yet. Can I really was tempted for a 5, and I'm like, like you said, Betsy, when you put words to it, I'm like, yes, that's it. The music is simple, and there's nothing wrong with simple music, but a more intricate melody would have bumped this up a little bit more.
Like more instrument or something.
Yeah, it's very simple, and that's fine. And actually, on this album where it's placed, it makes sense to have very simple instrumentation, which is why I've never thought before, like, hey, why doesn't this work for me? Because you follow this up with King of Bedside Manor, and you get all those weeps and boops and stuff. But like for me, like, no, this is a nice slow melody that really has an amazing message. I'm going to give it a 4.82.
4.82? Who thinks of that?
Very
Are you kidding me? That's it?
Man, you know, you
places they're going to go, Trace?
long enough to know that he does this stuff.
Hey, we're at 265 songs at this point. I got to start differentiating.
Wow.
If I'm going to start putting them in an order, I have to make some small little differences between certain songs.
3.1415927.
No, that was what Tyler gave one song once. Well, Mil, thank you for joining us from over the ocean. I know that the flight was long for this hour-and-a-half discussion.
Yeah,
but I appreciate you coming.
Your wings must be tired.
Yeah.
Fighting the jet stream and all.
Yeah, it was great to have you on, Mil.
Oh, it's great.
Yes,
and all the rest of you, thank you for joining as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Everybody.
Don't forget to go to our podcast and locate it on those locations that you can find us. And then we want to thank our sponsors for today. Our sponsors are, of course,
the letter A.
The letter.
Whatever you're using for your dog.
You got that. There we go. It's going to be right here. Bear apples, huh?
No, these apples was a couple of songs. That was a ways back.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
That should have been our sponsor that week.
Yeah.
It should have been.
Thanks, that was fun. Don't forget, no regrets, except maybe one.
To celebrate joining Pantheon Podcasts, Rock Camp, the podcast, the official podcast of Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, is giving away a guitar signed by Mike Portnoy of Dream Theater, Marty Friedman, formerly of Megadeth, and legendary shredder Zakk Wylde, plus our rockstar counselors like Vinny Appice, Monty Pittman, and more. To enter to win, simply follow, rate, and review our podcast on your preferred platform, and that's all you have to do. For more information, go to rockcamp.com/podcast.